A low wind whistled through a desolate New Mexico cemetery in 1882, stirring dust around a gnarled mesquite tree, its twisted branches clawing at a sky bruised with twilight. Abigail Harper, a young woman of 24, knelt before a fresh grave, her hands trembling as she traced the crude wooden cross etched with her mother's name, Mary Harper. Her auburn hair, tangled by the desert wind, spilled over her faded calico dress. She clutched a tarnished silver locket, its faint engraving catching the last rays of the sun. Her voice, raw but resolute, broke the silence. "Today, I buried my mama under this crooked mesquite tree. I'm alone, with nothing but her locket and a name. So, I walked to a rancher's door, begging for one day of shelter. But what he said next turned my world upside down." The vast desert stretched before Abigail, its golden sands rolling toward the jagged Sangre de Cristo Mountains, their peaks glowing like embers. She rose, brushing dirt from her dress, her fingers lingering on the locket as she tucked it beneath her collar. Over her shoulder hung a tattered burlap sack, her only possessions, a worn shawl, a half-empty canteen, and a crumpled letter from her mother, its ink faded but heavy with secrets. Her boots crunched on the gravel as she walked, each step weighed down by grief yet driven by a flicker of hope. Her mother's final words, whispered through fever, echoed in her mind. "Find Caleb Ward. He'll know what to do." Abigail didn't understand the promise behind those words, but they were all she had left. The sun dipped lower as she reached a sprawling cattle ranch, its weathered wooden fence stretching across the horizon. The ranch house, built of rough-hewn timber, stood defiant against the desert's relentless heat. In the distance, horses stamped restlessly in a corral, their whinnies mingling with the wind. Abigail paused at the gate, her eyes catching a small shed tucked behind the barn. Its iron padlock gleamed, heavy and forbidding, as if guarding a truth the ranch itself wanted to hide. The crimson mountains loomed closer, their shadows creeping across the land, stirring a quiet unease in her chest. The air felt thick, heavy with whispers of something unspoken. Abigail approached the ranch house, her heart pounding as she stood before the scarred oak door. She knocked, the sound sharp in the stillness. The door opened to reveal Caleb Ward, a rugged cowboy of 38, his broad shoulders filling the frame. His face, weathered like the land itself, bore faint scars that hinted at battles long past. His dark eyes studied her with a mix of curiosity and wariness, shadowed by a worn Stetson tilted low over his brow. His hand rested lightly on a revolver holstered at his hip. "Who are you, and what's your business?" he asked, his voice low, rough as the desert gravel. Abigail straightened, her chin lifting despite the ache in her chest. "My mama died today, rancher. Her name was Mary Harper. She said you knew her once. I'm Abigail Harper, and I'm asking, can I spend a day with you?" Her words hung in the air, bold yet fragile, carrying the weight of her loss. Caleb's jaw tightened, his gaze flickering as if her mother's name stirred a memory buried deep. He stepped onto the porch, the floorboards creaking under his boots, his shadow stretching long across the dusty ground. The fading light merged, his silhouette with the desert's vastness. "One night," he said at last, his tone clipped but not unkind. "You can sleep in the bunkhouse. Don't go poking around where you don't belong." Abigail nodded, her eyes darting briefly to the locked shed in the distance. She stepped inside the ranch house, its dim warmth swallowing her. The stone fireplace crackled faintly, casting a soft glow on the walls, where a faded map hung, its edges marked with cryptic lines and a single word scratched in the corner: Harper. The name sent a shiver through her, though she couldn't say why. Abigail set her sack on the floor, her fingers brushing the locket as she glanced out a window. The shed stood like a silent sentinel, its mystery tugging at her curiosity. Caleb lingered in the doorway, watching her with an unreadable expression. A man guarding more than just his land. The desert wind howled outside, carrying a warning. Abigail thought she'd found a moment's refuge. But the desert sun climbed over the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, bathing the New Mexico landscape in a fierce glow of gold and amber. Abigail Harper stirred awake in the bunkhouse of Caleb Ward's ranch, her body aching from a restless night on a straw mattress. The air was thick with the scent of sagebrush, leather, and the faint musk of cattle drifting from the corral beyond the window. She clutched her mother's tarnished silver locket, its engraved initials M.H. for Mary Harper Cool. Against her palm, the memory of her mother's grave beneath the crooked mesquite tree clawed at her heart. But her mother's final words, whispered through fever, burned brighter. "Find Caleb Ward. He'll know what to do." Abigail rose, smoothing her faded calico dress, its hem frayed from her long walk across the desert. She wasn't here to wallow, she'd earn her place, no matter how heavy her grief. Outside, the ranch buzzed with life. The weathered barns stood like silent sentinels, their wood bleached by years of sun. Horses snorted in the corral, their hooves kicking up clouds of dust that danced in the morning light. The crimson mountains loomed in the distance, their jagged peaks watching over the land like ancient guardians, their shadows shifting as if whispering secrets only the desert understood. Abigail's eyes lingered on the locked shed behind the barn, its iron padlock glinting like a challenge. Something about it tugged at her, a knot of curiosity tightening in her chest. Caleb was already at work, his broad silhouette moving through the corral as he wrestled a skittish colt, his rope snapping taut with practiced ease. His Stetson cast a shadow over his scarred face, but his dark eyes, sharp and guarded, softened slightly as he spotted Abigail. She approached, her boots crunching on the gravel, her chin high despite the weight of her loss. "I ain't here to be a burden, rancher," she said, her voice steady but laced with resolve. "Let me earn my keep." Caleb paused, wiping sweat from his brow, his gaze sizing her up. "Fair enough," he said, his tone gruff but not unkind. "Hay's in the barn. Start with the horses." A flicker of respect crossed his face, as if her boldness stirred something in him. Abigail hauled bales of hay, her arms straining under the weight, sweat beading on her forehead as the desert heat pressed down. Caleb joined her, his calloused hands brushing hers as they pitched hay into the troughs. The work was hard, but the rhythm of it steadied her, grounding her in the moment. Caleb spoke sparingly, his words rough but deliberate. "Rode the Chisholm Trail 5 seasons back," he said, tossing a bale with ease. "Lost half my herd to rustlers in 78. Learned quick who to trust out here." His eyes darkened, fixed on the horizon. Abigail studied him, sensing a story behind his scars, a man hardened by more than just the sun. "Who do you trust now, rancher?" she asked, a half smile tugging at her lips, her voice teasing but curious. Caleb met her gaze, his expression unreadable for a moment. "Myself," he said, but a faint crack in his voice betrayed something deeper, a loneliness that mirrored her own. Their banter flowed as they worked, Abigail's quick wit coaxing a rare chuckle from him. She pointed at a crooked fence post, grinning. "You call that straight? I've seen drunkards build better." Caleb smirked, tossing a handful of hay at her. "Says the city girl who holds a pitchfork like a parasol." For a moment, the ranch felt like a haven, its golden dust and creaking windmill wrapping them in a fragile peace. The mountains standing watch like silent allies. But the air shifted as hoofbeats thundered across the desert, shattering the mornings. Calm, a cloud of dust rolled toward the ranch, heralding the arrival of Tucker Vance, a man in his 40s with a tailored black coat and a smile sharp as a blade. His cold blue eyes swept over the ranch like a vulture circling carrion, his polished boots out of place against the gritty earth. 2 hired men flanked him, their hands hovering near holstered revolvers, their faces hard as the desert stone. "Caleb Ward," Tucker called, dismounting with a swagger that made Abigail's skin crawl. "Time's running out. Sell me this ranch or I'll take it my way." His voice was smooth as whiskey, but it carried a venom that chilled the air. Caleb stood tall, his hand resting on his own revolver, his eyes like flint. "This land ain't for sale, Tucker, never will be." His words were steel, but Abby caught a flicker of unease in his tightened jaw. Tucker's smile widened, predatory and cold, as his gaze slid to Abigail. "And who's this? Your new hired hand?" He sneered, his eyes raking over her dusty dress. "Careful, girl. This man's got secrets that'll bury you deeper than your mama's grave." Abigail's breath caught, her mother's locket suddenly heavy against her chest. How did he know about her mother? She stepped forward, her voice sharp. "I'm just passing through. But I know a snake when I see one, and you're rattling loud." Tucker's laugh was a low, cruel sound that cut through the desert air. He turned back to Caleb, his tone hardening. That deed you're clinging to stolen. I'll prove it in court or out here. With blood. He gestured to his men, their fingers twitching near their guns. Caleb didn't flinch, but his silence spoke of a past Abigail didn't yet understand. Tucker mounted his horse, his parting words hanging like a storm cloud. 1 week, Ward. Then this ranch is mine. His posse rode off, their hoof beats fading into the desert, leaving a trail of dust that stung Abigail's eyes. Abigail turned to Caleb, her heart pounding. What deed was he talking about? She demanded, her voice sharp with suspicion. Caleb's jaw clenched, his eyes avoiding hers as he kicked at the dirt. Old business, ain't your concern. But his words rang hollow, and Abigail's mind raced. Her mother had once spoken of a man like Tucker, a swindler who'd cheated her out of something precious years ago. Could it be the same man? The ranch, with its creaking beams and shadowed corners, seemed to close in around her, its secrets pressing against her like the desert heat. As night fell, the desert cooled, and coyotes howled in the distance, their cries echoing off the mountains. Abigail sat by the bunkhouse window, her fingers tracing the crumpled letter in her sack. Her mother's handwriting was faint but urgent. Trust Caleb, but find the truth. The locked shed loomed outside, its padlock glinting under the moonlight like a forbidden promise. Earlier, she'd seen Caleb glance at it, his face darkening as if it held something he feared. Districts. Please tell me you meant shed, and not shade. I'm dying here, feared. Abigail's stomach knotted, her resolve hardening. Unable to sleep, she slipped outside, the desert air sharp against her skin. Her boots moved silently over the gravel as she crept toward the barn. Her hand brushed a loose board near the shed, revealing a hidden key, cold and heavy in her palm. She froze, her breath shallow, the weight of her choice sinking in. The mountains stood silent, their crimson peaks watching like ancient judges. The wind stirred the dust at her feet, carrying a faint warning. Abigail clutched the key, her heart thundering. She'd come to this ranch for shelter, but the truth hidden in that shed might unravel everything she thought she knew. The moon hung heavy over the New Mexico desert, its ghostly light casting jagged shadows across Caleb Ward's ranch. Abigail Harper stood before the locked shed, the hidden key cold and heavy in her trembling hand. The Sangre de Cristo Mountains loomed in the distance, their crimson peaks glowing faintly, as if bearing witness to a truth about to be unearthed. The desert air bit at her skin, sharp with the scent of sagebrush and the distant howl of coyotes. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. Trust Caleb, but find the truth, a riddle that had driven her to this moment. Abigail's heart thundered as she slid the key into the padlock. The lock snapped open with a deep, hollow thud, reverberating like a warning in the still night. She pushed the shed's creaking door, dust swirling in the moonlight as it revealed a cramped, shadowed space. Inside, a wooden chest sat against the far wall, its surface scarred by time and weather, as if it held the ranch's secrets in its splintered grain. Abigail knelt, her fingers fumbling with the rusted latch, her breath shallow. The chest groaned as it opened, revealing a bundle of yellowed letters tied with frayed twine, a leather-bound journal, and a folded document sealed with cracked wax. Her hands shook as she recognized her mother's flowing handwriting on the letters. She unfolded one, the paper brittle under her touch, and read, "The ranch is ours, Mary Harper and Caleb Ward. Bound by promise. Tucker Vance will stop at nothing to steal it. Protect Abigail." Her eyes widened, her pulse racing as she uncovered a land deed beneath the letters. Its ink faded but unmistakable. Harper Ward Ranch. Her mother's name was scrawled beside Caleb's, co-owners of the land she now stood on. A chill gripped her. Tucker's venomous words from earlier rang in her ears. That deed you're clinging to, stolen. Had her mother been cheated? Why had Caleb hidden this? She opened the journal, its pages filled with her mother's notes. Tucker forged a deed to claim my share. Caleb swore to keep the original safe. For my daughter's future. Abigail's mind reeled. The ranch wasn't just Caleb's, it was her family's legacy, a truth her mother had died to protect. Before she could process it, the thunder of hoofbeats shattered the night, a low rumble growing louder, like a storm breaking over the desert. Abigail shoved the deed into her dress pocket and slipped out of the shed, her heart hammering. Dust clouds rose from the horizon, lit by the flickering glow of torches. Tucker Vance and his hired guns galloped toward the ranch, their silhouettes dark and menacing against the moonlit sands. Their faces were hard, eyes glinting with greed. Abigail sprinted toward the ranch house, her boots pounding the gravel, the locket bouncing against her chest. "Caleb," she shouted, bursting through the oak door. Caleb was already on his feet, his revolver drawn, his scarred face taut with alarm. "Tucker's coming," she gasped, her voice shaking but fierce. "He's got men 6, maybe 7. They've got torches." Caleb's eyes darkened, a flicker of fear betraying his stoic mask. "Get to the cellar," he ordered, grabbing a rifle from the wall, its barrel glinting in the firelight. Abigail shook her head, her jaw set. "I'm not hiding. This is my fight to my mama's name is on that deed." Caleb stared at her, his gaze searching hers, then nodded, a silent pact forming between them. They barricaded the door with a heavy oak table, the ranch house's stone walls their only shield against the coming storm. Outside, the corral horses screamed, their hooves thrashing as Tucker's men circled, their torches casting wild shadows. Across the ranch, the desert itself seemed to hold its breath, the mountains standing like silent judges. "Ward," Tucker's voice boomed, cutting through the night like a blade. "Hand over the deed, or we burn this place to ashes." Laugh was cold, a predator savoring the hunt. The first gunshot cracked through the air, splintering the doorframe and sending splinters flying. Abigail ducked, her heart thundering as Caleb returned fire, his shots precise but outnumbered. Bullets tore through the ranch house, punching holes in the walls, kicking up clouds of dust that stung her eyes. The air grew thick with the smell of gunpowder and fear. Abigail grabbed a shotgun from the wall, her hands steady despite the chaos. She fired at a shadow creeping toward the porch, the blast echoing like thunder. "Stay back," she shouted, her voice raw but unyielding, a fire kindling in her chest. Tucker's men set fire to the barn, flames licking the dry wood, painting the night in streaks of orange and red. The horses screamed louder, their panic mirroring Abigail's racing pulse. Caleb cursed, his eyes darting to the corral. "We can't lose them," he said, his voice tight with urgency. He bolted for the door, but a bullet grazed his shoulder, blood blooming dark against his shirt. He staggered, clutching the wound, and Abigail lunged forward, catching him before he fell. "You're hit," she cried, dragging him behind the table, her hands slick with his blood. Caleb gritted his teeth, his face pale but defiant. "Ain't done yet," he muttered, reloading his revolver with shaking hands, his eyes burning with resolve. The flames roared higher, the barn's timbers cracking under the heat. Abigail's eyes locked on Caleb's, a question burning through her fear. "Why didn't you tell me about the deed?" she demanded, her voice sharp despite the gunfire. Caleb's gaze softened, pain and truth mixing in his words. "Your mama and I bought this land together, years ago. We were partners, friends, maybe more. Tucker swindled her share, forged a deed to steal it. She made me swear to protect you, to keep the original deed safe until you were ready to claim it." His voice broke, raw with memory. "I've been fighting Tucker ever since, for her, for you." The words hit Abigail like a thunderclap. The plot twist sank in. Caleb wasn't hiding the deed for greed or power. He'd been guarding it, honoring her mother's dying wish, sacrificing his safety to protect her family's legacy. The ranch was her birthright, a piece of her mother she could still hold. Tears stung her eyes, but there was no time to grieve. Tucker's men closed in, their shouts growing louder as the fire spread, its heat searing the air. Caleb pushed himself up, blood dripping from his wound, and pressed his revolver into her hand. "You're stronger than you know, Abigail," he said, his voice steady despite the pain. "We hold the line together." Abigail gripped the gun, her resolve hardening like the desert stone. The ranch, with its creaking beams and dust-choked air, stood as a testament to their fight. The mountains loomed beyond, their crimson peaks glowing under the smoke, as if urging her to protect what was hers. Bullets whizzed past, the fire roared, and Tucker's men pressed closer, their torches casting a hellish glow. Abigail and Caleb braced for the final stand, knowing one chance remained to save the ranch and the truth her mother had died for. The air hung heavy with smoke, the barn's flames casting an orange glow across Caleb Ward's ranch, now a battleground scarred by gunfire. Abigail Harper crouched behind the overturned oak table in the ranch house, her hands slick with Caleb's blood as she pressed a torn strip of her calico dress against his wounded shoulder. The Sangre de Cristo Mountains loomed beyond the shattered windows, their crimson peaks shrouded in haze, as if grieving the chaos below. The desert night was alive with the crackle of fire and the distant shouts of Tucker Vance's men, their torches weaving through the darkness like vengeful spirits. Abigail clutched Caleb's revolver, its weight grounding her trembling hands. The land deed, tucked in her dress pocket, burned with the weight of her mother's legacy, a truth she'd uncovered only hours ago, tying her to this ranch and the man bleeding beside her. "Caleb, stay with me," Abigail whispered, her voice fierce, cutting through the roar of the flames. Caleb's face was pale, his dark eyes clouded with pain but flickering with defiance. Blood seeped through the makeshift bandage, staining her fingers red. "You gotta get out," he rasped, his grip weak but urgent on her arm. "Take the deed, get to town." Abigail shook her head, her jaw set, her auburn hair falling loose from its braid. "We're in this together, rancher. You don't get to quit on me now." Her words, sharp with resolve, pulled a faint smile from him, a glimmer of the cowboy who'd faced rustlers and storms without flinching. His scarred hand squeezed hers, a silent vow in the midst of chaos. The gunfire slowed, Tucker's men regrouping beyond the corral, their torches casting long shadows across the ranch. The horses' panicked whinnies echoed, mingling with the desert wind. Abigail's mind raced, piecing together Caleb's confession. Her mother, Mary Harper, had co-owned this ranch with him, a dream forged in years of toil and trust. Tucker Vance had swindled her share, forging a deed to claim it, leaving Mary with nothing but a promise Caleb had kept to protect Abigail's inheritance. At the cost of his own safety, the truth lit a fire in her, fiercer than the one consuming. "The barn, we end this tonight," she said, her voice low but unyielding. "Tucker doesn't get this land, not my mama's land." Caleb nodded, his breath ragged, his eyes searching hers. "There's a horse in the back corral fastest. Mare I got. Ride to Las Cruces, find Sheriff Boone. Show him the deed." His voice was steady despite the pain, a trust passing between them that anchored her. Abigail helped him to his feet, her arm steadying his weight as they stumbled to the back door. The ranch house groaned, its stone walls scarred by bullets, but standing firm, a testament to the legacy it held. The air outside was sharp, thick with the acrid scent of burning wood and gunpowder. Embers drifted like fireflies, and the mountains stood tall, their peaks a silent promise of endurance against the chaos. Abigail saddled the bay mare, her hands swift despite the tremor in her chest. The horse snorted, its eyes wide as embers. Fell around them, she tucked the deed deeper into her pocket, her mother's locket glinting against her chest, a reminder of the fight she carried. Caleb leaned against the corral fence, his revolver ready, blood dripping down his arm. "I'll hold them off," he said, his voice tight but resolute. "Go." Abigail met his gaze, her heart catching at the sacrifice in his eyes. "You better be here when I get back, Caleb Ward," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. His scarred face softened, a warmth breaking through his stoic mask. "You can stay forever, Abigail. This is your home." The words, simple yet heavy, rooted her to the ranch, tying her to the land and the man who'd guarded it for her. She mounted the mare and spurted into the night, the desert stretching vast and unforgiving before her. Hoofbeats thundered, drowning out the gunfire as she rode toward Las Cruces, the mountains guiding her like ancient sentinels. The town emerged from the darkness, its dusty streets lit by flickering lanterns, the wooden buildings huddled against the desert's edge. Abigail burst into the sheriff's office, her breath ragged, her dress torn and stained with dust and blood. Sheriff Boone, a grizzled man with a weathered badge and eyes sharp as flint, looked up from his desk. "What's this about, girl?" he asked, his voice gruff but tinged with concern as he took in her disheveled state. Abigail unfolded the deed, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "This proves Caleb Ward and my mama," Mary Harper owned the ranch. Tucker Vance forged a claim to steal it. He's burning the place down right now, trying to force Caleb out. Her words spilled out, sharp and urgent, as she recounted Tucker's attack, the gunfire, the fire, Caleb's wound. Boone's face darkened as he examined the deed, its wax seal and signatures clear as day. He ran a calloused finger over Mary Harper's name, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Knew your mama years ago," he said quietly. "Tucker's been greasing palms in this town for too long. This ends tonight." He grabbed his rifle and rallied a posse of deputies, their boots pounding the wooden floor as they armed themselves with grim determination. The ride back to the ranch was a blur, the desert wind whipping Abigail's hair as she led the posse. Her mare's hooves kicking up clouds of dust, the mountains loomed closer, their crimson peaks glowing faintly through the smoke. They arrived, to find the barn reduced to a smoldering skeleton, its embers glowing like dying stars. The ranch house still stood, its walls battered, but defiant, a symbol of the fight within. Caleb was slumped against the porch, his revolver empty, his face pale as he fended off the last of Tucker's men. The sheriff's posse charged, their gunfire scattering the hired guns like leaves in a storm. Tucker, caught in the open, tried to flee, his tailored coat flapping as he spurred his horse. Boone's deputies cut him off, tackling him into the dust, his forged papers spilling from his pocket. As the dust settled, Abigail knelt beside Caleb, his breathing shallow but steady, his hand warm in hers. She pressed a fresh cloth to his, wound, her heart pounding with relief. Sheriff Boone held up Tucker's forged deed, comparing it to the original, his face grim. "This fraud won't stand," he declared, cuffing Tucker as the townsfolk gathered, their lanterns casting a soft glow. The people of Las Cruces, once cowed by Tucker's influence, now stood with Abigail and Caleb, offering water, bandages, and quiet words of support. The ranch, scarred but unbroken, stood as a testament to their fight. Abigail looked at Caleb, her mother's locket glinting in the moonlight. "You kept your promise," she said softly, her voice thick with gratitude. Caleb's eyes met hers, a quiet strength passing between them. "So did you," he whispered. The mountains watched, their peaks a silent vow that the legacy would endure. But one question lingered. Could Abigail carry it forward? The dawn broke over the New Mexico desert, its golden light spilling across the scarred remains of Caleb Ward's ranch, painting the dusty earth in hues of hope. The barn was a heap of smoldering ash, its timbers reduced to blackened bones. But the ranch house stood defiant, its stone walls weathered yet unyielding, a mirror of the resilience Abigail Harper and Caleb had forged. The Sangre de Cristo Mountains rose in the distance, their crimson peaks catching the first rays of sun, glowing as if in quiet pride for the legacy reclaimed. Abigail sat on the porch, her mother's tarnished silver locket warm against her chest, its engraved initials M.H. from Mary Harper, a constant reminder of the woman who'd shaped her path. Beside her, Caleb leaned against a weathered post, his shoulder tightly bandaged, his face still pale but lit with a stubborn strength that matched the land itself. The desert air was cool, carrying the scent of sagebrush leather and the faint promise of a new beginning. Months had passed since the night of fire and gunfire, when Abigail had ridden through the desert to Las Cruces, her heart pounding as she carried the deed that proved her mother's claim. Sheriff Boone's posse had swept in, their rifles scattering. Tucker Vance's men, exposing his forged papers and shattering his grip on the town. Tucker now languished in a jail cell, his tailored coat tattered, his schemes undone by the truth Abigail and Caleb had fought for. The people of Las Cruces, once silenced by his threats, had rallied behind them, bringing timber, nails, and willing hands to rebuild. They'd shared stories of their own, of families cheated by Tucker's greed, and their gratitude wove a new thread into the ranch's story. Abigail had stayed, her roots sinking deep into the dusty soil, claiming the home she'd never known. She had. The ranch had become her world, its rhythms now as familiar as her own heartbeat. The creak of the windmill sang with every breeze. The restless stamp of horses in the corral echoed her own restless spirit, and the mountains seemed to breathe with the land, their peaks a constant reminder of endurance. Abigail and Caleb worked, side by side, rebuilding the barn board by board. Their hands calloused from hammering nails and mending fences. Their bond had grown, a quiet tapestry of respect and unspoken love, woven through shared glances and small moments. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Caleb spoke of his youth, his voice soft against the desert's hum. Rode with Comanche traders when I was barely a man. He said, his eyes distant, they taught me to read the desert every track, every shadow, traded horses faster than you'd blink, knew the land better than any map. His words sparked Abigail's curiosity, and she pressed him for more. Caleb told her how the Comanche shaped the ranching culture of 1880s New Mexico, their swift ponies and trading routes, laying the foundation for the cattle drives that built the West. Their knowledge of the land, their skill in breeding horses, was a legacy often overlooked, yet it lived in the very trails Caleb rode, in the spirit of the ranch itself. Abigail listened, her heart swelling with pride for the land she now called home, its history richer than she'd imagined. She thought of her mother, Mary Harper, who'd dreamed of this ranch, and wondered if she'd known the Comanche's influence, if she'd seen the same strength in this desert. One morning, as the sun painted the mountains gold, Abigail saddled the bay mare, the same horse that had carried her to town that fateful night. The mare snorted softly, its eyes bright as she tightened the cinch. Her mother's locket caught the light, glinting like a beacon. Caleb joined her, his Stetson tilted low, his scars softened by the dawn's glow. "You're natural," he said, watching her handle the reins with ease, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Abigail met his gaze, her heart full. "This place, it's more than land," she said softly. "It's my mama's dream, her fight, and now it's mine." Caleb's eyes held hers, a warmth passing between them, deeper than words, a promise that needed no vow. The ranch, with its weathered fences, creaking windmill, and endless horizon, felt alive, a testament to their shared triumph. As she rode across the desert, the wind whispering through the sagebrush, Abigail's thoughts turned to her mother, the locket, the letters, the deed. They were pieces of a legacy she now carried, a weight she bore with pride. She'd come to the ranch, broken, seeking shelter for a single day, but found a home forever. The mountains stood tall, their crimson peaks a silent vow that she'd honor that legacy with every sunrise. Her voice, steady and clear, cut through the desert's quiet. Some legacies are worth fighting for. The desert stretched vast. Before her, the mare's hoof beats a steady rhythm as she rode into the horizon, the locket gleaming against her chest. Abigail Harper